Hello everyone, this is Saturday of Subs Week on Pagan Perspective. I'm Tara, your usual Tuesday sub, but this week I was flying back from the UK to the US, and Delia was nice enough to swap days with me just for the week. This week's topic is about people becoming deities after death. So for this topic, we're supposed to give our personal perspective on the possibility of becoming a deity after death. So, if you don't already know this about me, while I am a pagan, I am also an atheist. So, as an atheist who doesn't literally believe in deities and doesn't believe in the afterlife, the idea of becoming a deity in the afterlife, not so much gonna make sense. In the literal sense. Kinda like clashing of two things that I don't believe in one, right? Okay, so you would probably think that I have absolutely nothing to say about this topic, but you would be wrong. The idea of a person striving to become or become like a god doesn't necessarily have to be taken literally. The idea can be used as a concept and a thought experiment for self-transformation and self-improvement. Whether or not you literally believe that you can become a god, the interesting thing about trying to become one is that the goal itself doesn't have to necessarily matter. You don't have to actually achieve the goal for the journey to benefit you. And likewise, you don't have to believe that the goal is achievable in order to get something from going after it. So the first thing to think about is, do you think a person thinking of themselves as a god would have a negative or a positive effect on them? Personally, I think that the answer is that it could go either way. And I think that's because you really need to distinguish between power-hungry on the one hand and empowerment on the other, or arrogance versus self-esteem and confidence. It's about taking joy in yourself versus taking joy in being above other people. To be negatively power-hungry is to desire power over other people, to feel good about yourself by feeling like you're above everyone else, looking down on them. There's a difference between trying to be great, trying to manifest your own potential greatness, versus trying to force the idea of your greatness on other people. It's not about exercising power over others, it's about being a powerful presence. So here's a new fact about me. I went to a women's college. At least I did for a year, and then I went co-ed after that. To those of you living outside of the US, I mean a university. This may seem like a really random thing to bring up right now, but it is relevant, so just bear with me. Right. So, at this women's college, which will remain unnamed for now, I encountered an extremely powerful idea. A lot of universities have a crest and a motto and a set of virtues and values that their students are supposed to strive to and embody. Most of the schools that I've been to, though, no one seems to take these things very seriously. At the women's college I went to, however, this was not the case. People took all of these things very much to heart. Our motto and our honor code were things that meant a lot to just about every student there. I don't think this is necessarily unique to the school that I went to, but it seems to only happen at schools where people are really proud of the school they go to and have a sense of community and feel like some of their identity is bound up with attending that school. At my school there was this sort of personification of all of the values and virtues. This personification represented an ideal, but at the same time it represented all of the people who went to that school. It represented the sort of person you were meant to come out of the school as. And yet at the same time, the fact that you were at the school at all meant that you were this. For someone to call you this is the highest compliment that you can receive. There was something amazing and powerful and transformative about this idea. This idea that you already are this great, amazing thing, and yet at the same time you are striving to be it. And just the act of thinking that you are this something transforms you into it in a way. It's a continual process of becoming and self-improvement. You're constantly striving to be it, but also reminding yourself that you already are this. This may sound contradictory, but somehow psychologically it works that way. We have a certain thing that we call this female personification, but I don't want to give it away because it has to do with the name of the school, so since I'm not mentioning the name of the school, it kind of defeats the purpose. It was an extremely powerful idea, and the fact that it was personified as a woman, since it was at a women's college, was also powerful. Towards the end of my stay at this university, I was thinking about this disembodied female who personifies these very specific characteristics and virtues. And I came to the conclusion that is very much like a sort of goddess cult. We even had our own mystery cults of a sort, with their own secret stories and knowledge and sacred objects and initiations. In times when I'm struggling and things aren't going very well for me, there is no greater comfort and no more uplifting thing for someone to say to me than to have one of my fellow students invoke that personification and say, "You are this, and therefore I know that you'll get through this." And for some reason, someone saying what should be the same thing, really, something like, "You are a strong, intelligent woman, and therefore I know that you will get through this," doesn't have the same power for me. And I think part of the reason is that this idea from my school has this powerful and very distinct personification that means so much to me. It's not just a couple of attributes that are a compliment. It's this way of thinking about yourself. It's a role that you can take on. It has this spirit, it has a certain sort of feel to it. Because of my experience with this concept and the powerful effect that it has had on me, I've been fascinated by the idea of experimenting with notions of deity and the self for the sake of self-improvement. And there's no singular way to do that I'm stuck on necessarily. I like to experiment with thinking about it in lots of different ways. Sometimes it's just a fun, playful question to get you thinking about things. Like, if you were a god or a goddess, what kind would you be? What would you be like? And as many deity concepts as there are as many ways that you can go with that question. You could think of it more as an ideal version of yourself, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. If you were a god, and people were praying to you, what do you think you would be best suited to help them with? Your answers to those questions can be very revealing about the sort of person that you are, your identity, the way you think about yourself, and the sorts of things that you care about and value. If you think about yourself as a deity, it's interesting to think about how are you different from that conception of yourself as a deity, and how could you actually become more like that in life, if that's desirable. If you were a deity, how would you move? How would you carry yourself? How would you speak? And personally, I think something that you can get from it is a sense of confidence and dignity. Because I'm so interested in this idea of the interaction between the concepts of self and deity, I'm also fascinated by when people put on a play and act out the role of a god or goddess. What is that like, and how do they act differently? And also, when people invoke a deity or like physically possessed by a deity, what effect does that have on them, and what does that feel like, and what is that experience like for them, and also for the people around them? If any of you have actually invoked a deity into your body, like as a physical possession kind of thing, I would be really curious to hear about your experience with that. Some people seem to consider themselves only a mere vessel. But I know some people believe that you must actually reach a certain level before you can actually perform such a thing. And sometimes they use the symbolism of alchemy, where you transform yourself in a sort of self-improvement process from lead into gold to be a better conductor for the divine. And in a sense, you are becoming as close as possible to a divine version of yourself. And I suppose the more that you do that, the more connected with the divine you are, and therefore the easier it is for you to channel the divine. But I'm particularly interested, I suppose, in how it affects a person afterwards. Does being possessed by a deity leave any sort of trace behind? Are you different afterwards? Does playing the role of a goddess in a play 8 times a year end up changing the way you feel about yourself in any way, or that changing the way you move, changing the way you hold yourself? Does it give you greater confidence? Does it make you feel more at peace in the scheme of things? Feel free to comment or send me a personal message or a video response if you have something to say about this, because I'd be really interested to hear what you guys have to say. Also, if you want to, in the comments you can let me know, if you were a god or goddess, what would you be the god or goddess of? Your answer can be joking or serious, I don't really mind. I'm just kind of curious to see what you guys would come up with. I think most people would agree, regardless of religious persuasion, that there are attributes of deity, however many you believe exist, that are also attributes of humans. We ourselves have some of the qualities and capabilities that are generally ascribed to deity. It is important to acknowledge that you have the power to influence the people and the world around you, and that comes with a certain responsibility. And I feel like sometimes people need to really claim that power. They need to claim their power to create an influence in the world. To me, there's something almost divine about the human capacity to create. Feeling like you're powerless and can't control anything is what leads to depression, and also ends up being a nasty cycle. And sometimes finding a way to psychologically make yourself feel empowered can have a huge influence upon the way you feel and the way you start acting within the world. If you're constantly feeling powerless and have such a weak, insecure notion of yourself, what's the likelihood that you're actually going to seize the day and try to become the greatest version of yourself that you possibly can be? These things take a lot of work and coaxing. So while I personally don't literally believe that someone can become a deity after death, I do think that it's a concept that can be extremely useful and fun to play with. This isn't the only way that I use the concept of deity within my practice, but it is one way, and I hope you at least found it interesting. I'm still in UK time, so I'm really tired now. I think it's time to sleep. Feel free to comment if you have comments, and I hope you have a fantabulous weekend.